My mom always told me that success is like an iceberg, people only see the tip, but all the hard work is hidden below. I never really understood this until I became that iceberg myself. I'm Emma Chin, and this is the story of how I went from being looked down on as a waitress by my husband's wealthy family to watching their perfect world fall apart in just one night. I grew up in a small apartment above my parents' restaurant in San Francisco's Chinatown. Hard work was part of my life before I was even tall enough to reach the kitchen counter. By the time I was 8, I was folding napkins and greeting customers. By 12, I was managing the restaurant's finances better than my dad. "Emma, help me with these numbers," my father would say, adjusting his glasses. I'd rush over, eager to assist. "Bah, the profit margin is too low. If we raise menu prices by just 10%, he'd laugh and ruffle my hair. "My little business genius, you'll go far, Emma." While other kids played with toys, I played with spreadsheets and business models. My parents worked 18-hour days to send me to college, and I was determined to make their sacrifices count. At Stanford, I created a financial analysis system that caught the attention of big investment firms. By 25, I had turned it into FinTech Solutions, one of the fastest-growing financial technology companies in Silicon Valley, but I preferred to stay behind the scenes, letting others take the spotlight. Then, I met Michael. It happened in a small coffee shop near my old neighborhood. I was wearing jeans, a sweater, and old sneakers, working on my laptop when he accidentally bumped into my table. "Oh God, I'm so sorry," he said, quickly grabbing my laptop before it got covered in spilled coffee. I was texting while walking, bad habit. "I know." I looked up and saw warm brown eyes and a nervous smile that made my heart skip a beat. "No harm done," I said, helping him clean the mess. "I'm Emma." "Michael, please, let me buy you another coffee to make up for almost drowning your laptop." One coffee led to dinner, then more dinners. Michael wasn't like the tech and finance guys I usually met. He was a high school history teacher, passionate about helping underprivileged students. He didn't care about stock markets, he cared about people. 6 months later, he proposed, and I said yes without hesitation. That's when I met his family, and everything changed. The Blackwoods were old money. Their conversations were filled with talk of summer homes and yacht clubs. Michael's sister, Victoria, was particularly proud of her high-ranking marketing job at Preston, Shaw, a top investment firm. At our first family dinner, Victoria made her opinion of me clear. "So, Emma," she said, swirling her wine, "Michael says you work in the service industry?" I could have corrected her, told her I owned a billion-dollar company, but something held me back. Maybe it was the way she said service industry like it was beneath her, or maybe I was just curious to see how they'd treat me if they thought I was beneath them. "I help run a family business," I said simply. "Oh, the little Chinese restaurant?" she asked, feigning concern. "How quaint." Michael shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. His mother, Eleanor, quickly jumped in. "Not everyone can have Victoria's success," she said proudly. "She just led a huge marketing campaign. The CEO of Preston, Shaw, personally praised her work." I almost laughed. Preston, Shaw was one of the many companies that used my financial software. In fact, they were negotiating a bigger deal with my firm. "That's impressive," I said sincerely. 4 months. Victoria used every family gathering as a chance to show off and remind everyone that I wasn't on her level. Michael would squeeze my hand under the table, but never openly defended me. "They're just set in their ways," he'd say later. "Give them time." Then, Victoria announced she was hosting a grand party to celebrate her promotion. She invited top executives from Preston, Shaw, and other major clients. During the planning dinner, she turned to me with a smug smile. "Emma, we need extra help with service. Since you have experience waiting tables, would you mind assisting the staff?" Eleanor clapped her hands. "Perfect. Emma knows all about running a restaurant." I met Victoria's arrogant gaze and smiled. "Of course," I said calmly, "I'd be happy to help." That morning, I had received an interesting email. James Preston, the CEO of Preston, Shaw, wanted to meet the mysterious founder of FinTech Solutions. He would be at the party. Victoria had no idea her big night was about to become far more interesting than she had planned. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't about getting even, it's about revealing the truth in the most spectacular way possible. And I had a feeling this party was going to be spectacular indeed. The day of the party arrived, and the Blackwood estate was transformed into a grand display of wealth. "Emma," Victoria's sharp voice cut through my thoughts. She had no idea what was coming. Victoria was already dressed in an expensive designer gown, probably worth more than my parents' first restaurant. She looked me up and down, her gaze lingering on my simple black dress. "The catering staff is waiting in the kitchen," she said. "Try to keep them organized. And please," she added with a smirk, "stay in the background. This is an important night for me." I nodded politely. "Of course, Victoria. I'll make sure everything runs smoothly." As I turned to leave, Michael grabbed my arm. "You don't have to do this," he whispered. "We can leave right now." I touched his cheek gently. "Don't worry," I said. "Everything will work out exactly as it should." In the kitchen, I found the catering team scrambling to keep up with Victoria's last-minute demands. A young server approached me nervously. "Mrs. Chin, Miss Blackwood wants the champagne served at exactly 8.5 degrees Celsius for her speech, but she also wants continuous tray service, and we're short-staffed." I smiled reassuringly. "Let me help. I have some experience with this." For the next hour, I worked alongside the staff, making sure everything ran smoothly while keeping an eye on the guests. Victoria was in her element, laughing too loudly and sipping champagne as she entertained her colleagues. I overheard her telling a group of guests, "Did you see Emma, my brother's wife? She's helping the servers. It's really where she's most comfortable, poor thing. Some people just aren't meant for our world." Eleanor joined in. "We tried to include her. Of course, that's what family does, but with her background, there's only so much one can do." I kept serving drinks, waiting for the right moment. More executives from Preston Shaw arrived, and at exactly 7:55, my phone buzzed. A message from my CFO. "Everything's ready, documents signed, you're good to go." Perfect timing. Victoria was getting tipsy, her voice carrying across the room. "You know," she said, "when Michael first brought her home, I thought he was joking. A waitress, but Mother says we must be charitable." Eleanor nodded. "We're even thinking of helping them with a down payment on a small condo, nothing too close to our neighborhood, of course." A ripple of excitement ran through the room. James Preston, the CEO of Preston Shaw, had arrived. Victoria practically sprinted to the door, champagne sloshing in her glass. "Mr. Preston, we're so honored you could make it." James was an imposing man, his suit perfectly tailored. His eyes scanned the room and landed on me. A flicker of recognition crossed his face. Victoria, misinterpreting his look, quickly said, "Oh, don't mind her, that's just my brother's wife, helping with service." She turned back to him eagerly. "Now, let me show you my marketing presentation." "Actually," James interrupted, still looking at me, "isn't that?" I calmly handed my serving tray to a waiter and walked over. Victoria's face twisted in embarrassment. "Emma, please, Mr. Preston doesn't need a drink right now, go back to the kitchen where you belong." "Hello, James," I said smoothly, "thank you for coming tonight." The color drained from Victoria's face. James smiled. "Mrs. Chin, I didn't expect to find you serving drinks at your own party." "My own?" Victoria's voice went up an octave. "Yes," James said, turning to her. "Since FinTech Solutions just acquired a controlling interest in Preston Shaw, I assumed this event was to announce the merger." He turned back to me. "Unless you wanted to keep that quiet for now?" The entire room went silent. Even the string quartet had stopped playing. Victoria's champagne glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the marble floor. I don't understand," she stammered. "Emma's a waitress. She runs a small Chinese restaurant." James laughed. "Mrs. Chin is the founder and CEO of FinTech Solutions. She just became my boss, and effectively, yours too." He smiled. "By the way, those algorithmic improvements you suggested for our trading platform are brilliant." Eleanor clutched a chair for support. "This must be a mistake. Emma's not, she couldn't be." "Oh, but I am," I said softly. In the silent room, my words carried. FinTech Solutions has been my company from the start, and as of 10 minutes ago, we own 51% of Preston Shaw. I turned to Victoria, including the marketing department. Victoria's face turned pale. But all those times all those times you treated me like a servant?" I finished for her. "Made comments about my background? Suggested I wasn't good enough for your family?" I smiled. "I remember every single one." Michael pushed through the crowd. "Emma, why didn't you tell me?" "Would it have made a difference?" I asked quietly. "Would you have stood up to your family if you knew I was wealthy? Because you never stood up for me when you thought I wasn't." My words hung in the air. Michael stepped back. his face full of shame. James cleared his throat. Well, since we're all here, shall we make the announcement official? Preston Shaw's new direction under FinTech Solutions leadership? He looked at Victoria. Victoria, I believe you had a speech prepared about the company's future. Would you like to deliver it, or shall I? Victoria swayed slightly, then turned and ran from the room. Eleanor hurried after her. I picked up a champagne glass and gently clinked it. Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention, please. The aftermath of my announcement rippled through the Blackwood family like a tidal wave. As I stood at the podium, outlining FinTech Solutions' vision for Preston Shaw, I watched them process their new reality. Michael stood in the corner, stunned. Eleanor had disappeared. Mr. Blackwood, who had always been quiet, sipped his drink, looking thoughtful. After the speech, James pulled me aside. That was quite the reveal, he said with a grin, though I must admit, I'm curious, why let them believe you were a waitress for so long? I sipped my champagne. Because people show you who they really are when they think you're beneath them. James nodded. Well, their loss is our gain. I look forward to working with you, this time, properly. As the party wound down, Victoria finally reappeared. Her makeup was fresh, her expression carefully controlled, but nothing would ever be the same again. Victoria, looking pale and fragile, marched straight toward me. You humiliated me, she hissed, in front of everyone who matters in my professional life. I met her gaze calmly. No, Victoria, you humiliated yourself. I simply allowed you to do it in front of witnesses. Her breath hitched. I'll resign. I won't work for you. That's your choice, I said, but before you make it, you should know that every major firm in the city has already heard about tonight's events. Your reputation for looking down on service workers while unknowingly insulting your CEO won't help your job search. She deflated slightly, the weight of reality sinking in. What do you want from me? I want you to learn from this, I said. Starting Monday, you'll be working with our community outreach program. We're partnering with local restaurants and small businesses to provide financial technology support. You'll be reporting directly to my mother. Your mother? She asked, confused. Yes, I nodded. She still runs the family restaurant, by choice, not necessity. She'll be overseeing our small business initiative. I think you'll learn a lot about real business acumen from her. Victoria opened her mouth to protest, then closed it again. For the first time since I'd known her, she looked uncertain. Eleanor approached next, her usual perfectly composed expression cracking. Emma, surely we can discuss this privately. We're family, after all. Family? I turned to her. For 3 years, you've treated me like an embarrassment. You excluded me from family photos, seated me with the staff at gatherings, and made countless comments about my unfortunate background. When exactly did you consider me family? We didn't know that you were wealthy, I finished, and that's the point, isn't it? You thought I was poor, so I wasn't good enough. Now that you know I'm rich, suddenly you want to talk. Mr. Blackwood, who had been quiet all evening, finally stepped forward. She's right, Eleanor, we've behaved abominably. He turned to me, his voice weary. I've sat back and watched this family's values deteriorate into something I don't recognize. Perhaps this wake-up call was overdue. Finally, Michael approached. The room had emptied, leaving only the family. Why didn't you tell me? He asked quietly. I sighed. I wanted to, so many times, but every time you stayed silent while your family belittled me, I realized something. If you couldn't respect me as a waitress, you didn't deserve to know me as a CEO. I love you, he said desperately. Love without respect isn't enough, Michael. Every time you let your family treat me as less than human, you showed me exactly what our marriage was worth to you. I can change, he pleaded, now that I know. Now that you know I'm wealthy? I shook my head. That's not change, Michael. That's just adjusting your behavior to suit your interests. I slipped off my wedding ring and placed it on the table between us. I filed for divorce last week. You'll be hearing from my lawyers. His face crumbled, but I had nothing left to give him. Turning to Victoria, I said, I have a meeting with the Preston Shaw board tomorrow morning. I expect you at the restaurant at 9 a.m. On Monday. My mother doesn't tolerate tardiness. I turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Eleanor, the estate looks lovely. You might want to enjoy it while you can. The bank just approved my bid to buy it. I think it'll make a wonderful location for our new charitable foundation, providing education and opportunities for service industry workers. The look on their faces was priceless, but I didn't stay to savor it. As I stepped into the cool night air, my phone buzzed. A text from my mother. Coming to the restaurant for a late dinner? Your father made your favorite. I smiled and typed back a quick yes. 20 minutes later, I sat in the familiar warmth of my parents' restaurant, eating dumplings and telling them about the evening's events. My mother said, shaking her head, such drama, but good. Some people need to learn respect the hard way. My father nodded sagely. Success without humility is like a tree without roots. It topples in the first strong wind. As I helped them close up for the night, yes, the CEO of FinTech Solutions still helps wash dishes. I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. The little girl who once counted coins at this very counter now counted her wealth in billions. But the most valuable lessons I'd learned weren't about money at all. They were about respect, integrity, and the courage to stand up for your worth. 6 months later, Victoria had transformed under my mother's mentorship, discovering a genuine passion for helping small businesses succeed. The Blackwood Estate had become the Chin Foundation for educational opportunity, offering programs for underprivileged students and service industry workers looking to advance their careers. Michael sent the occasional email, but I never responded. Some bridges, once burned, should stay ashes. As for me, I finally stepped into the public eye as FinTech Solutions CEO, but I never stopped helping at my parents' restaurant on weekends. It keeps me grounded, reminds me where I came from. Sometimes customers do a double take when they realize their soup is being served by a billionaire CEO. I just smile and ask if they need extra napkins. After all, success is like an iceberg, what people see is just the tip. The real substance, the true measure of a person's worth, lies in how they treat others, especially when they think nobody important is watching. And that's a lesson the Blackwoods learned the hard way.